The sun was a malevolent brazen eye in the prairie sky, mercilessly scorching the earth and painting the endless horizon in shades of desperate amber and rust. Clara's bare feet were raw and bleeding against the flinty, unforgiving ground, leaving small, dark trails on the yellowed prairie grass. Her simple homespun dress, once the color of clean cream, hung now in filth and tatters around her bruised legs. She had fled before the first hint of false dawn, while the household still slept, and the guttural, drunken snores of her father, Jedediah Vance, rattled the thin walls of their shack. Behind her lay the settlement of Siloam's Rest, a name that now felt like a curse, mocking any notion of peace or salvation. There was no rest in those dusty streets, no forgiveness in the grim church where the preacher thundered about piety while his gaze lingered on the undeserving. Her father, in a fit of drink and debt, had sold her to Elias Stone, the local smith. Elias was a man whose meaty fists were as hard as the iron he brutalized, whose breath was a perpetual haze of stale whiskey, and whose temper was quicker to ignite than the charcoal in his own forge. The forced wedding was scheduled for the very morning she fled. Time itself had dissolved into a single, terrifying impulse: escape. Clara pressed on, though her legs were collapsing beneath her, and her throat was seared raw with thirst. The vast, indifferent territory stretched out, a terrifying canvas of danger. Overhead, a pair of dark raptors circled, their shadows gliding like spirits across the endless, waving grass. She knew the dangers intimately: the silent slither of the rattlesnake, the swift attack of the wolf pack, the sun that could kill more certainly than any man-made weapon. Yet, these deaths seemed clean, almost merciful, compared to the grim, shackled life awaiting her back in town. Where does true safety lie? In the desperate, familiar tyranny of a town, or in the unpredictable, wild freedom of the unknown? A sudden surge of wind swept across the plains, bringing with it a sharp, distinct smell: sage, horse sweat, and cured leather. Clara's heart leaped into her throat. They had found her already. She stumbled and fell to her knees among the rough stems, frantically twisting her body to look back. But the horizon remained a shimmering, empty line where earth dissolved into sky. Then she heard it: the steady, rhythmic impact of hooves, coming not from behind, but from the west. A lone rider crested the nearest hill, a silhouette of power against the sinking sun. Clara gasped. The rider sat tall and straight, moving with a fluid, disciplined grace that spoke of a lifetime spent in profound harmony with his mount. As he drew closer, she saw the long, dark hair, unconstrained and flowing free, the soft, decorated leather shirt, the proud, powerful set of his shoulders. He was an Oglala warrior. Clara had been raised on the settlers' terrifying mythology, the lurid tales of savagery, of scalping, of pure white women carried off to fates worse than death. The settlers of Siloam's Rest spoke of the people of the plains as if they were monsters without mercy or soul. But as the rider approached, something in his bearing made her freeze, an instinct deeper than fear compelling her to wait. Perhaps it was the bone-deep fatigue, or perhaps a flicker of recognition of shared, quiet strength. The warrior's horse, a powerfully muscled pinto, gleaming with good health, came to a halt 20 feet away. He observed her with eyes as dark and unreadable as a deep pool. Clara waited for him to reach for the rifle slung across his back, or the knife at his hip. Instead, he raised one hand slowly, palm outward, the ancient universal language of peaceful intent. "You are wounded," he said in English, his voice deep and measured, carrying only a trace of an accent. Clara tried to speak, but only a dry, useless croak emerged from her parched throat. She swayed where she knelt, her vision blurring at the edges. The warrior dismounted with a singular, fluid motion. He was taller than she had anticipated, lean but coiled with inner strength, moving with the controlled elegance of a mountain predator. From a decorated saddlebag, he produced a water skin. He approached slowly, like a guide approaching a frightened fawn, and extended the skin toward her. Clara's hands trembled violently as she accepted it. The water was tepid but clean, and she drank greedily until he gently took it back. "Slowly," he cautioned. "Too quickly will sicken you." Up close, she saw he was young, perhaps 30 winters, with defined cheekbones and a strong jawline. A fine scar marked his skin from his left eyebrow upward, His eyes, she realized, held none of the brutal, consuming hunger she had grown so desperately accustomed to in men's faces. There was profound weariness there, yes, and something else. A grave, quiet assessment, as if he were reading her entire tragic history in her bloodied feet and torn garment. "Please," Clara finally managed to whisper. "I cannot return. I cannot." He studied her for a long, heavy moment. Then he looked back toward the east, his expression hardening slightly. "Men will soon follow your trail." She nodded, the dust on her face streaked by fresh tears. "My father, others, they will make me—" She could not articulate the horror. The warrior, whose presence was a silent shield, turned and scanned the vast horizon with practiced eyes. Whatever he saw, or failed to see, cemented his decision. He returned to his horse, retrieving a soft buffalo robe and strips of thick, pliable leather. "Your feet first," he said, kneeling again. He gestured for her to sit, and when she hesitantly complied, he began to gently clean her wounds with a small amount of water from the skin. His touch was paradoxically gentle yet efficient, the hands of one accustomed to tending to serious wounds. "My name is Kestrel," he announced as he began to bind her feet with the leather strips. "Hoxila Wichhapi, Starboy. My mother was a white woman, taken in a raid when she was very young, but she chose to stay with my father's people. She taught me her tongue." He met her eyes briefly. "What is the name they call you?" "Clara," she whispered. "Clara Vance." "Clara," he repeated, tasting the unfamiliar sound. "Where does your path lead?" The unanswerable question, the one she had avoided since her escape. Where could an utterly alone woman go in this savage, endless wilderness? She had nothing. No money, no kin beyond the man she fled, no skills beyond domestic labor and the desperate art of avoidance. "I do not know," she admitted. "Only a way. Just a way." Kestrel finished the wrappings and sat back on his heels. The late afternoon sun painted his bronze skin with a deep, warm glow. He seemed to be weighing not merely her life, but the gravity of a decision that would affect his own. "The dark comes soon," he finally said. "The hunters wake, men also." He stood and extended his hand to her. "You come with me. I know a place of hiding." Clara stared at his outstretched hand. Everything in her memory screamed warnings. Savage, heathens, dangerous. But those same treacherous voices had demanded she be obedient, marry the monster, and accept her cruel fate with Christian resignation. Those voices had brought her to this moment, barefoot and bleeding. When the choice is between two terrors, which one do you dare to trust? She took his hand. He lifted her easily to her feet, steadying her slight sway with careful, controlled movement. He draped the buffalo robe fully around her shoulders, then lifted her onto his horse as if she weighed no more than a child. She braced, expecting him to swing up behind her, to press his body close, as the men in Siloam's Rest inevitably would have. Instead, he took the mare's reins and began to walk, leading them north toward the distant dark line of cottonwoods that marked a stream. They traveled in profound silence as the last light bled from the sky, setting the prairie ablaze with final, desperate color. Clara clutched the robe, marveling at the clean, impersonal nature of this man's presence. Kestrel walked with an unhurried, purposeful gait, occasionally glancing back to check on her, but never with that consuming, predatory look she knew so sickeningly well. As the deep purple twilight enveloped them, they reached the cottonwoods. A hidden stream gurgled softly between the trees, and in a protected curve of the bank stood a small, efficient shelter made of bent saplings and hides. Kestrel helped her dismount, his touch minimal and purely functional. "Rest," he instructed, pointing toward the shelter. "I will make the fire." Clara stumbled toward the wickiup and collapsed gratefully onto the buffalo robe spread inside. Through the low opening, she watched him tend to his horse first, removing the saddle, speaking softly to the mare, brushing her coat with practiced, caring strokes. Only when the animal was secure did he begin to gather wood. The ordinary, simple domesticity of his actions, a man performing simple tasks as the dark descended, brought an unexpected wave of emotion that tightened her throat. When had she last felt secure as night approached? When had darkness meant anything other than terror? Soon, a small, controlled fire crackled, casting protective, dancing shadows on the cottonwood trunks. Kestrel disappeared briefly into the darkness and returned with more water, fresh from the stream. He placed a small earthen pot over the flames and added strips of dried meat and a few roots from his pack. "Eat, then sleep," he said, settling cross-legged on the far side of the fire. "Tomorrow we ride to my people's camp. The women will provide you with suitable clothing for the journey." "Your people?" The old terror surfaced in her voice. "But I am white. Will they not—" "My mother was white," he gently reminded her. "Now she is Lakota. Family is not made by blood alone." Clara drew the robe tighter. "I cannot be anyone's family. I will never be owned again." For the first time, something akin to a true smile touched his usually stern features. "Lakota women are not owned," he stated. "They choose their own destiny, their husband. They can end a marriage simply by leaving a man's possessions outside the lodge." He stirred the simmering pot with a wooden spoon. "You will learn our ways, you will heal, and then you will choose your own path. And if men follow you here," his expression hardened again, "they will discover that the Oglala Lakota stand as a fortress for those under their protection." That declaration, spoken without a shred of arrogance, just quiet, absolute certainty, made Clara's eyes burn with unshed tears. Protection without ownership, strength without cruelty. She had believed such things only existed in the worn fairy tales her mother had told before the fever took her. They ate the simple stew in a comfortable, shared silence, the warmth spreading through Clara's exhausted body. Her eyelids grew heavy, but the old habit of desperate vigilance made her fight the sleep. "Sleep," Kestrel said softly. "I will maintain the vigil all night." And so Clara Vance, who had lived in a constant state of waking terror for years, finally surrendered. She curled up on the buffalo robes in the small shelter, while an Oglala warrior sat silent and watchful by the fire. The vast prairie night sang its ancient elemental songs around them, the distant howl of the coyotes, the flight of the hunting owl, the wind whispering through the grass. But for the first time in her memory, these sounds brought no fear. She slept, and her dreams were not of the dreadful wedding, or Jedediah's crushing rage, or Elias Stone's brute hands. She dreamed instead of running, not away from a threat, but toward a promise, a future still nameless, but shining with possibility beyond the rim of the world. Kestrel's vigil lasted until the first hint of morning. Clara woke to the song of the morning birds and the soft crackle of the fire's embers. For a moment, pure cold panic seized her. Where was she? Then the memories returned. The flight, the warrior, the promise of safety. Through the shelter's low opening, she saw Kestrel still seated by the fire, his silhouette unchanged from when she fell asleep. He turned instantly at the sound of her stirring. In the pale dawn light, she could finally see the deep weariness in his eyes, though his posture remained intensely alert. "The stream flows there," he said, gesturing through the cottonwoods. "Cleanse yourself. I will not look upon you." Clara emerged from the shelter, testing her wrapped feet. They ached, but the leather strips provided essential cushioning. She moved to the stream, finding a secluded spot behind a large, fallen log. The water was shockingly cold, stealing her breath, but she scrubbed the caked dirt and dried blood from her skin and dress as best she could, forcing herself not to dwell on her total vulnerability, unclothed and exposed in the wild. When she returned, Kestrel had laid several items on the blanket: a soft, worn leather dress, a pair of flexible moccasins, and strips of finely woven cloth for her hair. "My sister, Swift Fawn, has many," he explained. "She will not mind." Clara touched the leather dress, marveling at the careful beadwork along the hem, finer than anything she had ever owned, despite being what the settlers called savage clothing. She retreated to the shelter to change, emerging feeling fundamentally altered. The dress fell to her calves, modest, but allowing a freedom of movement she had never experienced in her stiff, constraining cotton garments. "Better," Kestrel commented, and she detected a distinct note of approval in his tone. He had already packed the shelter, loading everything onto his patient mare with practiced efficiency. "Can you ride at all?" Clara admitted her father had owned a heavy plow horse, though she'd rarely been allowed to mount it. "Good. Today we will share the horse. My people's camp is a day's ride, perhaps more with the needed stops." He helped her mount, then swung up behind her. Clara tensed, waiting for his hands to stray, for his body to press inappropriately close. Instead, he maintained a strict, careful distance, only placing a light, necessary hand on her waist to steady her as the mare moved. They rode north as the sun climbed higher, following no visible trail that Clara could discern. Yet, Kestrel never hesitated in his direction. The open prairie soon gave way to low, undulating hills dotted with juniper and pine. He stopped frequently, checking their back trail, allowing her to drink and rest. During one stop, as they rested beneath the shade of a massive boulder, Clara finally asked the question burning in her mind. "Why are you truly helping me?" He was silent for such a long time that she thought he would not answer. Finally he spoke, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "My mother also ran when she was young, much like you. A trapper found her, brought her to the fort, to the soldiers." He paused, choosing his words with care. "They did not assist her. They returned her to the man who had hurt her. She ran again? In the depth of winter, my father's hunting party found her, near death from cold. She chose to remain with us, learned our ways, and found kindness she never knew among her own kind." "Is she still alive?" Clara asked. "No. She died 5 winters ago. But she died free. She lived, choosing her own path." He looked directly at Clara. "All people deserve this, the right to choose their own life." They continued the journey. The landscape gradually became more complex, broken by deep ravines and sheltered valleys. Kestrel began to teach her as they rode, his voice deep and patient. "See there, tracks of the antelope, fresh, perhaps an hour old. And there," he pointed to small scratches on a pine trunk, "bear marking its territory. Old, but we are safe." Clara listened intently, understanding that these were survival skills offered freely, without condition. When they stopped to rest the mare, he showed her edible plants, wild turnips, choke cherries, prairie onions. His hands moved with certainty as he demonstrated how to dig roots without killing the plant, ensuring its return for the next season. "Everything has a spirit," he explained. "Take only what is needed. Give thanks. This way, the earth always provides." It was a philosophy radically different from Jedediah's code. Take everything, give nothing, own what you can grab. Clara found herself hungry for this new knowledge, this different way of seeing the world. As the shadows lengthened, they entered a narrow valley between 2 steep hills. Kestrel suddenly raised his hand, pulling the mare to a stop. His entire posture had transformed, alert and tense like a wolf scenting danger. "What is it?" Clara whispered. "Smoke, not a cooking fire. The smell is wrong." He dismounted silently, helping her down. "Wait here. Stay with the horse." But Clara had learned too well the peril of being a woman who waited helplessly. "I am coming with you." He studied her determined face, then gave a single firm nod. Together, they crept up the hillside, utilizing the low juniper bushes for cover. Near the crest, Kestrel dropped to his belly, motioning for her to do the same. They peered over. Below, in a small sheltered meadow, lay the smoldering remains of a wagon. Smoke still spiraled from the wreckage. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a cry. 2 bodies lay beside the ruins. Settlers, a man and a woman, arrows piercing their backs. "Crow," Kestrel muttered, reading signs that were invisible to Clara. "A war party, maybe 6 or 7 warriors. They passed 2 hours ago, no more." "Are they still near?" "No, they took the horses and the goods, gone east." His expression was grim. "This is why I must bring you to my people quickly. The Crow and the Lakota are long enemies. They would not be kind to a white woman traveling with a Lakota warrior." They retreated carefully to the mare. Kestrel immediately changed their route, leading them higher into the hills, through impossibly steep paths. Clara understood now the true depth of her danger, not just from her father and Elias Stone, but from the brutal, complex tapestry of tribal conflicts she barely comprehended. As dusk approached, they reached another secluded spot, a shallow cave, deep enough to hide a small fire, but allowing a clear view outward. Kestrel worked swiftly to prepare them for the night, his movements economical and fiercely watchful. "We cannot reach my people today," he said. "It is too dark, too dangerous. We rest here. Leave at the first light." Clara helped him gather wood, feeling a surge of pride when he nodded approval at her selection of dry branches that would burn with little smoke. As they sat by the small fire, sharing dried pemmican from his supplies, she felt the pressure of unspoken questions. "Your sister's dress," she finally said. "Will she not resent you giving it to a stranger, a white woman?" "Swift Fawn will be glad," he replied. "She says I dwell too much on old hurts. I need to see the good that remains in the world." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "She will say, helping you proves her right. Old hurts." His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, where Clara now saw another, older scar beneath his tunic. "I had a wife once, Winter Dove. She was killed in a cavalry attack 4 summers past. We had no warning. The soldiers rode in at dawn, shooting into the lodges, women and children. It did not matter to them." Clara's throat tightened. "I am sorry. Your sorrow cannot change the past, but you remind me that not all whites are soldiers. Some are simply people hurting, people in need of help." He added another small stick to the fire. "My mother taught me this, but I had forgotten it in my grief. In the deepest darkness, what does it take to choose hope over despair, or kindness over resentment?" They sat in a shared, heavy silence as the night deepened outside their refuge. Clara noticed how he positioned himself subtly between her and the cave entrance, protective, not possessive. "Tomorrow," he promised, "we will reach my people before the sun is high. You will be safe there." "And you," Clara asked, "what will your people say about bringing a white woman into the camp?" "Some will speak against it," he admitted. "But my uncle is the chief, Chief Iron Will. He will remember how my mother came to us, and how she became a beloved sister and daughter. He will speak for you." He met her eyes across the small flame. "Do not fear. I will not leave you alone among strangers." This simple declaration, made without condition or demand for gratitude, nearly broke Clara's composure. In her old world, protection always came with a crushing price: obedience, submission, ownership. But this quiet warrior asked only that she survive, that she choose her own path. "I don't know how I can ever thank you," she whispered. "Live free," he replied. "That is thanks enough." As the fire slowly died down, Kestrel began to sing softly in his own language, a low, melodic chant that seemed to weave itself into the night air like smoke. Clara did not understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable, a prayer, perhaps, or a warding against unseen evil. She fell asleep to that ancient music, experiencing for the second night the impossible luxury of absolute safety. Outside, the vast darkness held its threats: bears and wolves, crow war parties, Jedediah's relentless pursuit. But inside this small circle of firelight, with this unlikely guardian keeping watch, Clara Vance began to believe she might actually live to see what choices tomorrow would bring. The following days blurred into a predictable, strengthening rhythm of survival and learning. True to his word, Kestrel had brought Clara to his people's encampment, where she was received with intense curiosity, but not outright hostility. His uncle, Chief Iron Will, had listened gravely to her story and granted her sanctuary. Now, as the deepening autumn painted the hills in bold gold and crimson, Clara found herself gradually adapting to a life she could never have imagined. "No, not like that," Swift Fawn laughed one morning as Clara struggled to scrape a deer hide. "Too much pressure, and you will tear it. Too little, and the fur remains. Here, feel." Kestrel's sister, a woman of warmth and endless patience, guided Clara's hands, showing her the proper angle and motion. Swift Fawn had been genuinely delighted to have a woman near her own age in the camp, especially one who provided such constant, if clumsy, entertainment with her attempts at basic tasks. "I am hopeless," Clara sighed, sitting back on her heels. "You will learn," Swift Fawn reassured her. "When I was a child, I ruined many hides. My mother made me practice on old, tough ones until my hands knew the way, without my mind having to think." Across the camp, Clara often watched Kestrel working with the young boys, teaching them the vital art of stringing bows. He moved among them with a patient, natural authority, adjusting grips, demonstrating the perfect draw. Sometimes he would glance her way, and she would instantly return to her work, her face flushing with unexpected warmth. A pattern emerged. Mornings were spent with the women, learning the intricate, endless tasks required to maintain the camp: hide work, beating, preparing and preserving food, gathering wild edibles. In the afternoons, Kestrel would seek her out for the different kind of lessons, the skills meant to keep one alive, alone in the unforgiving wild. "Today we track," he announced one afternoon, appearing by the lodge where she worked. "Come." Clara set aside her beating and followed him. They walked far from the camp into a grove of aspens whose golden leaves whispered secrets in the autumn breeze. "What do you observe?" he asked, pointing at the leaf-strewn ground. Clara carefully studied the earth, recalling his earlier teachings. "Deer tracks, but different sizes." "Good. What else?" She knelt, examining them closely. "The smaller ones are overlaid on the larger, so a fawn following its mother." His quiet, approving nod made her disproportionately proud. "Yes. And how long ago?" This was much harder. She touched the edge of a track, testing the moisture in the packed earth. "Recent? The edges are still sharp, perhaps 2 hours past. Good eyes." He moved forward, showing her broken twigs, disturbed leaves, all the minute signs of passage she was slowly learning to read. "Why is this knowledge important?" he asked. "To find game, yes, but also to know who moves through your land. Animal, human, friend or enemy, all leave their story." They spent the afternoon tracking the deer, never intending to hunt, merely following the silent, complex story written in the earth. Kestrel was unlike any teacher Clara had ever known. He never once raised his voice, never showed impatience when she missed an obvious sign. When she succeeded, his quiet, honest approval meant more than the most effusive praise. As the afternoon shadows grew long, they came upon a small creek swollen dramatically by a recent rainstorm. The crossing they had used earlier was now a rushing, treacherous torrent. "We must go upstream," Kestrel decided, but after a considerable walk, no better crossing appeared. "I can try to wade across," Clara offered, though the current looked dangerously swift. He studied the water, then her. "No, too dangerous. I will carry you." Before she could object, he lifted her effortlessly, one arm beneath her knees, the other around her back. Clara immediately went rigid. A flood of terrible memories of other men, other hands washed over her, hands that never meant safety. "Breathe," Kestrel said quietly, not moving. "I will not cause you harm." Clara forced herself to relax, to trust. He stepped into the stream, the water surging around his strong legs, soaking his leggings. Midway across, his foot slipped on a hidden rock. He compensated instantly, pulling her closer to maintain balance. For a brief, dizzying moment, she was pressed firmly against his chest. She felt his heartbeat, steady and strong. His arms around her were clearly protective, not possessive. When they reached the far bank and he gently set her down, Clara found herself strangely reluctant to step away. "Thank you," she managed, her voice slightly breathless. Something deep flickered in his dark eyes, instantly masked. "Come, the camp is near." That evening, as Clara helped serve the communal meal, she overheard 2 warriors speaking in Lakota, a language she was now starting to understand. "Kestrel spends much time with the white woman," one observed. "He remembers his mother," the other replied, "and perhaps it is time he looked beyond his grief for Winter Dove." Clara kept her face blank, but her hands trembled slightly as she ladled the stew. Later, sitting with Swift Fawn outside their lodge, she couldn't resist asking, "Your brother, did he truly love his wife so much?" Swift Fawn's expression softened. "Like the sun loves the sky. When she died, I feared he might follow her to the spirit world. For 2 seasons he was a ghost among us. Only his duty kept him tethered here. What greater love can there be than one that makes a haunted heart beat again?" Swift Fawn gave her a knowing, pointed look. "And now, he teaches a white woman to track deer and carries her across swift streams. The women talk, you know. They say he smiles again sometimes." Heat rushed to Clara's cheeks. "He is only honoring his promise to keep me safe." "My brother does not make such promises lightly," Swift Fawn corrected gently. "But safety and kindness? These are not the reasons why a warrior begins to sing again when he believes no one is listening." That night, unable to sleep, Clara walked to the quiet edge of the camp to look at the vast, unsettling beauty of the stars. She wasn't surprised when she heard quiet footsteps behind her. "Troublesome thoughts?" Kestrel asked, coming to stand beside her. Too many, perhaps. They stood in an easy, comfortable silence, watching the constellations wheel overhead. Finally, he spoke. You are changed now, stronger. I am learning, Clara agreed, though I will never be truly Lakota. The heart of being Lakota is here, he said, touching his own chest. Not in blood alone, you work hard, you respect our ways, the people see this. And you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. What do you see? He was quiet for so long, she feared she had overstepped. I see a woman who chose flight over surrender, who grows stronger with every sunrise, who makes my sister laugh and helps the elders without being asked. He paused, his voice dropping slightly. I see someone I am deeply glad I found on that desolate prairie. Clara's heart thumped against her ribs. In her old life, such words from a man would have been the prelude to demands, to taking. But Kestrel simply stood there, entirely respecting the space between them, letting his words stand alone. I dream sometimes, she confessed quietly, that my father finds me, that he drags me back. Then he will face me, Kestrel said simply, and he will face all my people. You are absolutely under our protection now. I don't want to bring this danger to your camp. He turned to look at her, his face serious in the starlight. Danger comes whether we invite it or not. But a life without honor, a life without protecting those who need it, this is not a life worth living. A cold wind swept across the prairie, and Clara shivered. Without hesitation, Kestrel removed his own blanket and draped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering just for a moment on her arms. Come, the night grows cold. As they walked back to camp, Clara wrapped tightly in his blanket. She felt a profound, fundamental shift occur within her soul. The cold, familiar fear that had been her lifelong companion was slowly being replaced by something else. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The realization that strength could coexist with gentleness, that protection could be a free gift, that a man's honor could be a shelter rather than a cage. She thought of the woman she had been just weeks ago, terrified, bleeding, ready to embrace death. That woman could never have conceived of this. Walking safely through the dark with a warrior who had shown her more respect in a few weeks than she had known in her entire lifetime. Kestrel, she murmured softly as they reached the camp's edge. He paused, his deep, patient eyes holding hers. Thank you. For everything? He inclined his head slightly. You give thanks too freely. I only do what is necessary. But as Clara made her way back to Swift Fawn's lodge, still enveloped in his blanket that smelled of wood smoke and earth, she knew it was far more than simple necessity. By choosing to help her, to teach her, to stand between her and harm without ever asking for submission, Kestrel had shown her a truth she had never believed possible, that there were still good men in the world, men who understood that true strength lay not in taking, but in protecting. What small daily act of kindness makes you feel truly safe? The morning began like any other, with a sharp frost dusting the grass and the camp slowly stirring to life. Clara was helping Swift Fawn prepare the morning meal when the dogs erupted, not with their usual casual greeting, but with the deep, aggressive bark reserved strictly for strangers. Kestrel materialized instantly at Clara's side, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife, his body a coiled spring of readiness. "Stay near the lodge," he ordered, before moving toward the edge of the camp where other warriors were gathering. But Clara instantly recognized the voice that sliced through the morning air, and her blood turned to ice. "I know she is here. My daughter, Clara Vance. I have come to reclaim my property." Jedediah Vance. Somehow, he had tracked her. Through the growing crowd, she could see them, 5 men on horseback. Jedediah sat in the lead, his face a swollen mask of fury and cheap liquor, despite the early hour. Beside him rode Elias Stone, the blacksmith, his massive frame making his horse look pitifully small. 3 other men from Siloam's Rest completed the group, all armed, all wearing the smug, righteous expressions of men utterly convinced of their own just cause. Chief Iron Will emerged from his lodge, a figure of profound dignity. Kestrel stood at his right hand, ready to translate. "Why do the white men approach our peaceful camp armed?" the chief asked. Jedediah spat tobacco juice deliberately close to where the chief stood. "We come for stolen property, that woman there." He pointed directly at Clara, who had emerged despite Kestrel's warning. "She is my daughter. She was carried off by your savage." "I was not taken!" Clara stepped forward, her voice surprisingly steady. "I ran away. I chose to leave." Elias Stone's laugh was harsh and ugly. "Women don't choose, girl. You belong to your father until you belong to me. That is the law." "White man's law," Kestrel stated coldly. "It carries no power here." Jedediah's hand moved toward his pistol. "Boy, you will hand her over, or we will—" He never finished the threat. Kestrel had drawn his knife in one fluid motion, the long blade flashing in the morning sun. All around them, Lakota warriors swiftly nocked arrows to their bowstrings with silent, practiced ease. "You are 5, Kestrel stated simply, his voice low but carrying absolute menace. "We are many, and you threaten those under our protection." "Protection?" Elias Stone sneered, his eyes flicking over Clara's beaded dress. "She's a white woman living with savages. Good Christians have a duty to save her from defilement." Clara found her voice, a sudden searing wave of anger overcoming her fear. "The only defilement I have ever known was in your Christian town. These people have shown me more respect and kindness than I ever knew among my own kind." Jedediah's face purpled with fury. "You ungrateful witch! After everything I did for you! You beat me!" The words exploded from Clara. "You sold me to him?" She pointed at Elias. "Like I was common livestock. I have seen the scars he leaves on his horses. I know what he would have done to me." "Discipline," Jedediah snarled. "It's what you need, what you have always needed." Chief Iron Will raised his hand, and silence fell instantly. When he spoke, Kestrel translated the chief's words, his voice carrying immense authority. "This woman came to us asking for sanctuary. She has worked alongside our people, learned our ways, shown respect. She remains here by her own choice, not by force. This is the Lakota way. All people choose their own path." "I don't care a damn about your ways," Jedediah screamed. "She is coming with us now." He dismounted, striding toward Clara. Kestrel moved to intercept, but Clara surprised everyone by stepping forward herself. "No," she said quietly. Her father stopped, blinking in shock. She had never defied him so directly in her life. "No," she repeated, louder and stronger. "I will not go. You hold no power over me here. I am your father. A true father protects, a true father cherishes. You did neither." Clara's voice grew with strength. "I choose to remain with people who understand honor." Jedediah's face contorted with pure rage. He lunged forward, his hand raised to strike, but Kestrel was impossibly fast. He caught the older man's wrist, holding it immobile with what appeared to be effortless strength. "You will not touch her," Kestrel said, each word precise and sharp as a blade. "Not here, not ever again." For a terrifying moment, the two men were frozen, a stark tableau of two irreconcilable worlds. Then, Elias Stone made a fatal error. Seeing his promised bride defended by a savage, his own towering rage boiled over. He drew his pistol. The twang of bowstrings filled the air. Elias's wide-brimmed hat flew from his head, an arrow having passed close enough to score his scalp. His horse reared violently, nearly throwing him. More arrows thudded into the ground at the horse's dancing hooves. "The next arrows will not miss," Chief Iron Will said calmly. Kestrel translated, "Leave now, do not return." Jedediah wrenched free of Kestrel's grip, scrambling backward toward his horse. "This is not finished. I will be back with the cavalry. They will burn this entire camp to get her back." "Then they will find nothing," Kestrel replied, a hint of warrior's pride in his voice. "White man, your soldiers are slow and loud. We hear them coming for miles. We move like the wind. You will chase only ghosts across the prairie." "You are making war on the United States," one of the other men shouted in panic. Swift Fawn stepped forward then, her English careful and clear. "We make war on no one. We protect a woman who asked for our help. If this is a crime in your world, then your world is shattered." The standoff held taut as a strained bowstring. Clara saw Jedediah calculating the odds. 5 men against 30 armed warriors with arrows already aimed. "Get on your horse, Jedediah," Elias Stone growled, holstering his pistol with bitter reluctance. "We will handle this properly, through the law." As the men mounted, Jedediah locked eyes with Clara one last time. "You are dead to me, girl. Do you hear me? dead. You have chosen these heathens over your own blood. I have chosen freedom over slavery, Clara replied, her voice ringing with newfound clarity. I have chosen respect over fear. If that makes me dead to you, then I have been dead for a very long time already. What is the true cost of speaking your truth when it challenges everything you've ever known? The 5 men wheeled their horses and galloped away, raising a storm of dust in their wake. The warriors held their bows drawn until the riders disappeared over the horizon. As the tension finally broke, Clara found herself shaking, the delayed reaction setting in. Kestrel's hand gently touched her elbow. You were very brave, he said. I was terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear, he corrected. It is the act of doing what is right despite the fear. He studied her face. Your father, he will try again. I know. Clara looked around the camp that had become her haven. I have brought danger to your people. Perhaps I should leave. No. The word was sharp, immediate. He caught himself, speaking more softly. No, the running is finished. You stand and fight now, and we stand with you. Chief Ironwill approached, placing a heavy, weathered hand on Clara's shoulder. He spoke at length in Lakota, Kestrel translating. My uncle says that today you spoke with the heart of a warrior. You claimed your freedom openly before all to see, among our people. This act is sacred. He names you Wayakawin, Feather Woman, for you have learned to fly free like the eagle. Tears blurred Clara's vision. A new name, her own name, chosen, not given, earned, not imposed. But eagles must still watch for hunters, the chief continued. Your father spoke of soldiers. We must prepare. The rest of the day was spent in furious preparation. The camp that had seemed so permanent revealed its nomadic nature as the lodges began to come down. Goods were packed and loaded. By the evening meal, they were prepared to move at a moment's notice. Kestrel found her as she helped Swift Fawn pack their household goods. You did well today, he said, but this is only the beginning. They will return with more men, more guns. I know, Clara replied, carefully wrapping Swift Fawn's beading materials. I am sorry for bringing this hardship. Stop, his voice was firm. You bring no hardship. They bring hardship. You bring... He paused, searching for the perfect words. You bring life back to places that were dead. Before Clara could ask what he meant, a young warrior ran up, speaking rapidly in urgent Lakota. Kestrel's expression darkened instantly. Scouts report soldiers are one day's ride south, perhaps 20 men. Clara's heart sank. So soon. Jedediah must have ridden straight to the fort, twisting the truth to inflame the cavalry's sense of duty. What will we do? Kestrel smiled then, a true warrior's smile that completely transformed his serious face. What the Lakota have always done. We disappear like smoke. We let them chase ghosts across the prairie. That night, as the camp finalized its preparations for movement, Clara worked alongside the women with a new, fierce understanding. She wasn't merely learning skills anymore. She was an essential part of something immense, a people who valued freedom above all else. Jedediah thought he could cage her again, but he failed to comprehend. She had tasted independence, felt the dignity of being treated as a person instead of property. The stars were brilliant overhead as Kestrel came to walk with her one last time before the long move. Are you afraid? He asked. Clara considered the question deeply. Yes, she admitted. But it is different now. Before, I feared the cage. Now, I fear losing my freedom. It is a better fear, I think, one worth facing. He nodded in approval. Tomorrow we ride north into the sacred hills. Soldiers will not follow there. Too easy for ambush. Too difficult to track. You will be safe. We will be safe, Clara corrected. I am not separate anymore. Your people's danger is mine. In the darkness, she felt his smile. Wayakawin, yes, you finally understand. As they stood together under the vast sky, Clara knew the coming days would test her newfound courage, but she also knew she would not face them alone. Behind her stood a whole people who understood that freedom required a fight. And beside her stood a warrior who had demonstrated that strength and gentleness could live in the same heart. Let them come, she thought, a cold resolve settling in her soul. They would not find the frightened girl who had fled Siloam's rest. They would find Feather Woman, who had learned how to fly. The fire burned low, casting erratic shadows across the hidden valley, where the band had made a temporary camp after 3 grueling days of hard travel. Most of the people slept, utterly exhausted from evading the cavalry patrol that had pursued them like tenacious hounds. But Clara could not sleep. She sat wrapped in her buffalo robe, watching the flames reduce to glowing embers. Kestrel materialized from the darkness, moving with his characteristic absolute silence. He added a few sticks of wood to the fire, then settled across from her. "Your thoughts weigh heavily," he observed. Clara pulled the robe tighter around her. "I keep recalling that other life, the one I left behind. Sometimes it feels like a nightmare I have finally awakened from. Other times," she struggled to articulate the thought, "other times you wonder if this freedom is the dream." She nodded, surprised by his immediate understanding. "Everything has shifted so fast. A month ago, I was preparing for a wedding I dreaded. Now I am learning to tan hides and speak Lakota while constantly running from the soldiers." "Change arrives like the summer storm," Kestrel said, swift, powerful, and washing away what was rigid and broken. They sat in quiet communion for a long while, listening to the pure sounds of the night, an owl's distant call, the wind in the pine boughs, the soft yips of coyotes. Finally, Clara gathered the courage to voice what had been weighing on her heart, the core of her fear. "In my world, my old world, between men and women, there were rigid rules, expectations. I was taught that a woman's body was a form of currency, to be carefully guarded until it could be traded in marriage. Then, it belonged entirely to her husband, to use as he wished." She stared into the fire, unable to meet his eyes. "My mother, before she died, she tried to prepare me. She told me to be dutiful, to endure, that it would hurt at first, but that was normal, that men had needs and wives had obligations." Clara's voice was suddenly laced with bitterness. She never once suggested it could be different. Perhaps she didn't know the truth herself. "Your mother lived in a cage," Kestrel said quietly. "She could only teach you how to survive within that cage. She could not teach what she did not know." Clara finally looked at him. "What is it that Lakota women know?" He considered the question with great care. "They know their worth is not in what they can endure, but in who they are. They know their bodies are their own, a gift from the Great Spirit. They know that joining with a man should bring joy, not pain." "Joy," Clara repeated, the word sounding foreign and almost shocking in that context. "My mother told me once," Kestrel continued, "that she pitied white women. She said they were taught to fear what should be beautiful. Among our people, women possess power. They choose their husbands. They can divorce with dignity. In the marriage bed, their pleasure matters as much as the man's." Clara felt a blush rush to her cheeks, but she held his gaze. "I have never heard anyone speak of a woman's pleasure. Because your people make sacred things shameful," he explained, his voice holding an edge of genuine anger. "They take what should be sharing, and they make it taking. This is why I promised you would never be harmed. I have seen what your world does to women. It is deeply wrong." The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling into the darkness. Clara watched them rise and disappear. "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, "when you help me down from the horse, or when you steady me across the stream, I feel things. But then fear surges back, because I was taught that feeling leads only to pain." Kestrel leaned forward slightly. "Fear is the true enemy of joy. It makes the body rigid when it should be soft, closed when it should be open. This is why Lakota mothers teach their daughters differently. They teach that desire is natural, like thirst or hunger. They teach that satisfaction is their sacred right. But how can they be certain?" Clara asked. "How can they trust?" "Because Lakota men are taught too," he replied. "From boyhood, we learn that our strength is for protecting, not for conquering. That a woman's trust is a gift that must be earned every day, not a prize to be seized. A man who harms a woman in the marriage bed brings shame to himself and his entire family." Clara absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with everything her life had taught her. Elias Stone, the blacksmith, he used to say that women who enjoyed that, they were wicked, broken. "Then he was a fool," Kestrel said flatly, "and a coward. Only weak men need women to be broken to feel powerful." They fell silent again. Clara felt as though she stood on the edge of a deep ravine, looking down at the beliefs that had shaped her entire existence. To question them felt profoundly dangerous, revolutionary. "I dream sometimes," she confessed. "Not nightmares about my father or Elias, different dreams, dreams about possibilities. But I wake ashamed. Shame is a chain your people wrapped around you. You can choose to remove it." "How?" Kestrel stood and moved around the fire to sit beside her, carefully maintaining a respectful distance. "By learning your own heart, by understanding that what you feel is natural, not wicked, by knowing you have the right to choose what happens to your body, always." Clara turned to look at him, studying his face in the firelight. "Even if I chose to always keep my distance, even then?" "Especially then." His eyes were steady, sincere. "I told you I would die before hurting you. This includes hurting your spirit by pushing past your boundaries. But you are a man. Don't you have needs?" The word tasted bitter, carrying the full weight of Jedediah's crushing teachings. "I have feelings," Kestrel corrected. "Desires. Yes, I do. When you smile while learning a new skill, when you laugh with swift fawn, when you stand bravely against your father. I feel many things. But these are my feelings to manage, not your burden to carry." Clara felt tears welling up. No man had ever suggested his desires were his own responsibility. "In my old life," she said slowly, "I was taught to make myself small, quiet, accepting, to never want, only to be wanted, to never choose, only to be chosen. But here," she gestured toward the sleeping camp, "here, I learned to track and to work hides. I have a name I earned. I speak my thoughts without punishment." "You are becoming who you always were," Kestrel said, "not changing, uncovering. What is the most difficult truth you have ever had to uncover about yourself? And if what I uncover surprises me or frightens me, then you face it with the same courage you have faced everything else." He paused, then added quietly, "And you are not alone in facing it." Clara felt something crack and shift inside her chest, like thick ice breaking under the spring sun. "When you carried me across that swollen creek, I felt safe, not just safe from drowning, safe from everything. I had never felt that before, with a man. This is as it should be. A man's arms should be sanctuary, not threat. Your wife, Winter Dove. She knew this safety." A sad, soft smile touched his lips. "Yes, she was fierce in her own right, afraid of nothing. But in my arms, she could be soft. She told me it was like being held by the mountain, strong, steady, unchanging. You must miss her terribly." "I do, but grief is not a permanent cage either. It is a season that passes." He looked at her directly. "She would have liked you. She would have said, 'You have the heart of a warrior struggling to break free.'" The fire had burned low again. The camp slept peacefully, secure in their hidden valley. Tomorrow would bring more flight, more uncertainty. But tonight, in this moment, Clara felt a deep, profound possibility of healing. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Not of you, of myself, of discovering I am not the quiet, dutiful person I was taught to be. This is wisdom, not weakness. Change requires courage." Kestrel stood, preparing to return to his guard post. "But know this, Waiakowin. Whatever you discover about yourself, you remain under my protection. Whatever you choose or do not choose, you are valued here." As he walked away, Clara called softly, "Kestrel!" He turned. "Thank you for seeing me as more than something to be owned or fixed or saved." "You were never broken," he replied, "only caged, and cages, no matter how strong, cannot hold an eagle forever." Alone again by the dying fire, Clara sat with her thoughts. The conversation had unlocked doors she had kept chained for a lifetime. Behind them lay possibilities she had never dared to name, that her body belonged to her. That desire was not sin. That she had the absolute right to want, to choose, to feel. It terrified her. But it also exhilarated her. In the distance, a wolf howled, answered by its mate. Even predators, she realized, sang to their mates with tenderness. The natural world knew nothing of shame, only connection. She thought of Kestrel's steady eyes, his careful distance, his promises that demanded nothing in return. She thought of how utterly different it felt to be guarded rather than guarded against. For the first time in her life, Clara began to understand that when he had whispered, I will die before hurting you. He had not just meant physical pain. He meant he would never cage her spirit again. As the stars wheeled overhead and the fire died to glowing coals, Clara Vance, Wyakawin, felt the first tentative stirrings of what freedom truly meant. Not merely escape from Jedediah's house or Elias Stone's fists, but the total liberation of the chains wrapped around her mind and her heart. Tomorrow she would ride again, fleeing the soldiers who sought to drag her back to that old life. But tonight, she had taken the first irreversible steps on a different journey, toward healing, toward trust, toward the shattering possibility that joy might exist where she had only ever known fear. The owl called again, and this time it sounded like a blessing,